For many years now, Russ and Craig have had many wide-ranging conversations with folks from all over the gaming world. This is one of those conversations.
D6G, the Lost Chapter.
Hey, Craig, what are you having today at good old Dunkin' Donuts here?
Water.
Water? What, are you on some super diet or something?
No, I'm not having water. I'm having iced coffee again. It's freezing and there's a foot of snow outside. What else would I have?
Why are you having iced coffee? Get the good stuff. Get the hot stuff.
I love iced coffee. No, I don't drink regular coffee, except very rarely. Sometimes I will have regular coffee like for breakfast.
Yeah.
Or very occasionally with a dessert.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But during the day or like in the evening hanging out like this, I drink iced coffee. I don't know.
So this is the time of year when I get mesmerized by how they make the donuts at Dunkin' Donuts because, you know, in the summer they make those star-shaped yeast donuts. Mm-hmm. And now because of Valentine's Day, they're making heart-shaped yeast donuts.
It does seem like it would be very impressive to figure that out.
Yeah. I mean, anyway, we're not here to talk about Dunkin' Donuts, although, you know, we always do. No, we thought it'd be fun to go back. Now, we've been doing this now for several episodes of The Lost Chapters. People have asked us, hey, guys, you reviewed these games so many years ago. Are you still playing them? What do you think of them? Do you still think they're as good as when you first reviewed them or talked about them?
Where are they now? Wait a minute.
Where are they now? The Games Edition.
Exactly right. So when we last left off at the Where Are We Thou initiative here.
We left off with our heroes in episode 71.
Yes. So we
left off at episode 70,
right,
which means we picked them up now at episode 71.
Which happened to have been published back in January of 2011.
Oh, God. We've been doing this for such a long time.
What the what? Okay. So in episode 71, Craig, we reviewed we did two things. First of all, we had a Spartan Games interview.
Yes.
Which I'm sure was excellent. I can't remember it at all anymore.
Yeah.
But
I believe that might be the one that had like the awful audio, and we had to do a Lost Chapters about the about the episode.
Because that was right after that episode aired. That was when the first Lost Chapter went live.
Yes.
And
it's a walk down memory lane.
It is. But in addition to all that, we also reviewed the Death Watch RPG.
That's right. 40K roleplay Death Watch.
Yeah. So Craig, since then we've played a few games. You played more than I of Death Watch, but we played a few.
Yeah, no, we have played. We haven't played in a while, to be honest. We actually haven't played. I don't think we've played since Ross Watson ran the game for us at Gen Con a couple of years ago.
Didn't you run a small one, not including me or something, or did Rafe run one? I thought it was run recently.
No, Rafe has been doing a Rafe thing.
Okay, and
he's been running 40K roleplay games using the Savage World rules.
Okay,
yeah. But using like all of the backdrop stuff from the 40K roleplay.
Got it.
But Death Watch. I mean, to be totally honest, Russ, if I'm going to be honest, I find the 40K roleplay catalog now to be very heavy.
Heavy in what way?
Well, you've got Death Watch, you've got Rogue Trader, you've got Dark Heresy, you've got Black Crusade.
Right.
Now you have Only War, which is the IG one. So there's 5 different versions.
Right. And
you're either going to love one, latch onto it, and run, or you're going to kind of be like, I don't know, I like 40K in general, but none of these are really like, you know, and so I feel like there's too many options when you go in there. You're like, hey guys, let's do a one-off 40K.
Can you mix and match them though? Can I be a Space Marine with your Imperial Guard with the Rogue Trader kind of thing?
You absolutely can mix and match them. The only thing that you can't really mix and match is sort of the themey element.
Right.
Like you can't have. Well, I guess you could have a bunch of Inquisitor peons running a spaceship with a whole full crew.
Why not? Someone's got to wash the windows.
Yeah, that's true. They've got to be washed. Yeah. So I would say, especially also given the fact that lately, at least my impulses have gone towards more simple and narrative heavy, but rules light role playing, like Savage Worlds. So So 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, I should say, Ross did that extremely cool game for us, that long late night game on my birthday. But I don't think we've played Death Watch since then.
All right. Okay. So Yeah, but how does it sit prominently on your shelf? Do you still look at it longingly and wish you could play more Death Watch?
Yeah,
or?
well, I mean, I've never written for Death Watch. I wrote a little bit for Dark Heresy, and then I did a couple things for Rogue Trader, and I did a couple things for Dark Heresy, one thing for Rogue Trader, and then my big stuff for them was primarily Black Crusade.
Yep.
So, and I would have liked to get a Black Crusade, but then half the group's like, I don't want to be a bad guy, and I can totally see that. Like, I just wanted to do it because that's what I was already doing.
Right, got it.
And that's what I mean by there's so many options there now in that line. But anyway, so that's how so it's on my shelf. I would like to, like, if somebody else wanted to run a game, I would love to jump in. But it's not any sort of a go-to for me, I guess, is what I'm saying.
So then in episode 72 was a prediction episode, so we didn't review any games there.
Yeah.
But then episode 73 came out, and that featured one of my favorite games, although I have to admit I have not played it in a while, Merchants and Marauders.
I loved Merchants and Marauders. I went out and bought it right after we reviewed it, and I have never played it. I
have played it probably 4 or 5 times since the review, and which is not that impressive when you consider this is February 2011. So I love it. And if someone brought it back to the store and said, let's play again, I would play it again in a heartbeat. I really like the game. It is a bit luck-driven, and it definitely and there's definitely different challenges whether you play the merchanty path or the marauding path or some kind of combination thereof. But I really do like it, and I'm not sure why it doesn't get more playtime.
Well, I think it's really cool, and even though I've never played it, I didn't regret buying it because I think in the right crowd it could really shine.
Right.
The reason I don't think it sees a lot of play is there's so much going on, so many new games bubbling up. I don't think it really distinguishes itself with any big either theme or innovative mechanic element that really distinguishes itself.
You know what game reminds me of it that we play now, which is Firefly. Firefly reminds me of it, but except there's no combat in Firefly. But Merchants and Marauders is at its heart a pick up and deliver game that also features a pretty cool combat system.
Right.
Whereas Firefly does not have the combat part. But it's got the cool sort of little submission part. So, but yeah,
it's got the theme.
Yeah, it's got the theme. So I like it though. Still, I would play it again. But for some reason, I don't pull it out very often, and I'm not sure why that is.
Yeah, well, I mean, because there hasn't been any supplements to drive interest back into it.
Yep.
And so I think that as much as I particularly decry this constant pushing of supplements and expansions and blah, 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 blah. Without that, your game kind of gets just churned under the field of everybody else's games constantly being produced, especially with Kickstarter now and everybody's looking forward and blah, blah, blah. Without doing something to put your game back into the limelight, so to speak, I think you kind of unless it's a huge game that just everybody loves and gets into the rotation, which is very rare. I think most games sort of find themselves settling down out of sight.
Good point. And I think
even good games, and I think this is a very good game.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. And because Eclipse was that for me, because I just got the ship expansion pack for Eclipse, and I'm all back into Eclipse now. But if that hadn't come out, I think I would not have been playing it. Now, here's an interesting one, though. So, episode 74.
Yes.
This might be the exception that proves the rule. We reviewed Survive, Escape from Atlantis.
Which does get local regular play.
Oh, yes. I played this game countless times since we reviewed it.
Which is huge every year at our Adepticon game night.
Yep.
And I think it's huge and gets constant play. 1, because it's a cool game. 2, it's very simple, so there's not a lot of relearning rules.
Yep.
And 3, it's fast and fun and furious, and you're screwing with each other, and it's just a very fun game that's easy to jump back into no matter how long it's been.
Yeah.
And it's just action oriented, and there's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah. And I think also it's a great family game. It's also fast, easy to teach. It's a good gateway game. If you got limited time, you can play it quickly. It's all of the above. To be honest, I prefer the original edition to the reprint.
Me too. Unfortunately, I did not get the original edition when it came out.
I got the original, and the reprint is all plastic now, which I like less. And I don't like the new art style, I'll be honest. I don't. So yeah, but I love it, but that should not deter you from getting the new edition if you do not own it, because it's a
absolutely
fantastic game.
Yeah.
So then, let's see, that one happened. Oh, then we got into March here of 2011 with episode 75.
Oh, this is an interesting one.
Yes, so here we reviewed Wrath of a Shardalon.
Yeah.
Now, Wrath of a Shardalon was the second game in the series after Castle Ravenloft. Both these games I own. Actually, also own the third, Legend of Drizzt. And I enjoy all these games. I have played them quite a few times since we reviewed them, although it does not get as much play as Descent. Descent is still my preferred dungeon crawler.
Right.
Also, what was interesting is since these was reviewed, they released the Dungeon Command series. And Dungeon Command is interesting because it's a standalone game, as we've reviewed before, with all kinds of cool player-to-player combat. But the models in there also include cards, so you can play them with the D&D dungeon crawl games, such as Wrath of a Shardalon.
Right. Yep.
So it didn't, but ironically, it did not breathe new life into these games locally.
It did not.
But we never really had a big fan base for these locally. A couple of us liked them. Ryan and I played it quite a bit. And my kids liked them, but they actually like Super Dungeon Explorer better. So I guess there are stronger dungeon crawls out there.
And that's what I think.
And that's really what it comes down to. It also comes down to whether or not you like the pure co-op of this.
Right.
This is pure co-op, or you like the Overlord versus the party style of Super Dungeon or Descent.
Right. And I think locally we tend to want an antagonist.
And also, I think I got into these when Descent 1, we got disenfranchised with Descent 1 after the Sea of Blood issue. I started playing this like crazy.
The Sea of Blood debacle.
Since Descent 2 came out, I have not looked back. It's been my favorite dungeon crawling board game.
They fixed everything for you, especially with the lieutenants.
For me, they did. Yes, other people have been less than thrilled, but I think if you go now with all the new expansions and drop your huge chunk of change, you're in good shape on Descent.
Right.
But yeah, I don't think it's a bad game. I think it's a good one if you like, especially if you like D&D.
If you have three other friends and you like co-ops and you like dungeon crawls, there's not going to be a better one.
And of the three that exist, if you could only afford one, I would say Wrath of a Shardalon is the best of the three.
Really?
Yes, I think so. The big complaint against Castle Ravenloft was there never felt like there was enough bad guys on the table at once, because Ravenloft sort of spawns like these little higher end vampires and stuff.
Right.
Wrath of a Shardalon does a couple things better. It gets more monsters on the table and per encounter. Also introduces a campaign system, which did not exist for Ravenloft, so you can play the games consecutively. So I like it the best. Drizzt is good too, but it's more themed based on the novels, and I think you'll get less out of it if you're not familiar with him and his friends. So I would recommend Wrath of a Shardalon if you can only pick one of the three sets.
Okay. I was under the impression that the game was constantly being evolving and getting better, but
if you own all three sets too, it does help you because you can interlock the heroes and their abilities and give you more selection.
No, I'm certainly not questioning your conclusion. I don't know where I got that idea, but it seemed like people were like, oh, they just keep getting better, but those very well could have been our hardcore D&D
could be
fanboys.
Well, also if you're a Drizzt guy, you'd like it.
That's what I meant. Yeah, they would.
The third one wasn't bad. It just didn't. I think the second one's a sweet spot for some reason. Okay, so then we got to the second half of March here with episode 76 with a Mutants and Masterminds interview.
Yeah.
So we didn't really review Mutants and Masterminds. And to be honest, I never actually played. Well, I played it way back in the day.
I was not actually involved in this interview.
Yes, you were not. It was sort of interesting.
No, I was not.
So yeah. so there you have it.
I don't remember anything about Mutants and Masterminds.
So there you go. So that takes us into what's April next, right? April 2011.
Yeah.
Starring, dun, dun, dun. What do we get to here? Let me see. I got to find my spot here in my little...
I'll tell you. Mansions of Madness.
Mansions of Madness.
All right. Now, Mansions of Madness was interesting. This game came out...
It is interesting.
It was very, very hot.
Yep. I think it still is hot amongst the...
amongst the tentacle loving set. Yes.
Yes, indeed.
Neither you nor I bought this game, nor did we get a review copy. We just knew someone who had it, and they played it for us. We played with them a couple times.
Yeah,
once a year place, once at the store.
To be honest, neither of us are big H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah,
fans.
we're not. That's not our thing for some reason. It's not nothing wrong with it. You and I just aren't into it.
Exactly.
Liked it, but to be honest, I have not played it since we played it to review it. Have you?
Me neither.
And I don't see it very often, if ever, at the local gaming store.
No, I mean somebody's playing it because they've got a crap ton of expansions and painted models and all kinds of stuff coming out for it. But I know that Cthulhu is huge.
Mm-hmm.
I know that it's ridiculously popular, and all you have to do is put the name Cthulhu or mythos into your Kickstarter to make $1 million. I know all that is true, so I don't doubt it. I know people who are like, "Oh, I love Cthulhu," and they get all foamy at the mouth when you mention it. But you're right. I don't see that impacting their gaming. I don't see a lot of Cthulhu games coming out. I don't see Mansions of Madness. I don't see Cthulhu Dice or, and I don't see even the RPG guys playing any Cthulhu. So I don't know if it's big locally other than with a couple hardcore guys.
I do see the Eldritch Horror being played and the other new one, I saw being played. That's a quicker version of Arkham Horror. So there is some play there, but I have not seen this Mansions of Madness. I don't know if it just takes too long or what locally. But
I'm sure it's huge. Like I said, Fantasy Flight does not pump out expansions for games that aren't making them money.
There's
not locally.
A lot I loved about it. I mean, I loved the way the mechanics worked. I loved the way the storytelling went.
I had fun when we played it.
Yeah, as much as I liked level 7, I could see myself getting into this if it was my genre.
Exactly.
I like this whole dungeon crawl overlord versus the players. Yeah,
and I think that's what we're both saying is that this is all about genre and theme.
Yes, as
opposed to mechanic. Because I love the components were beautiful. Everything the game did extremely well. It's one of those things where I say if you give me a steak, an $80 steak, but I'm a guy who doesn't like steak, I'm not going to appreciate the $80 steak. So I think this is an $80 steak version of a really cool dungeon crawl Cthulhu game, but I'm not that guy, I guess.
Right. So then later in April 2011, we reviewed Carson City. Now, Carson City is the cowboy-themed worker placement game.
Yes, indeed.
In which you have cowboy meeples, and you are trying to stake your claim in the newly being built Carson City. And you get properties, and you get rated for other people's properties, and it's got a cool little mechanic along the top there where you put your meeples into what you want to do, so it's all sequenced, so you can't really screw up the placement order or anything. This is a good game. It's one of my, until Lords of Waterdeep came out, I would probably argue is one of my, possibly my favorite worker placement game.
Yeah, I enjoyed this game when we played it, and I hadn't been thinking. I was trying to figure out why it's not seen again, considering how many cowboy fans we have. And then when you mentioned Lords of Waterdeep, that clicked for me.
I think now I do know a couple friends who own it. I played it recently. I played it in December, actually. So we brought it to my house and played it. Yeah, and it's as fun as it ever was.
Yeah,
I played it with my brother's family a couple times. My kids like it. It's a good game. It hasn't been Jones theoried out, I don't think. It's because it's a different theme entirely, but Lords of Waterdeep is sort of like the go-to worker placement game now for a lot of us.
Yeah.
I think that's sort of what happened to it. Although it's still a great game, and if you like cowboys, this is a no-brainer. Get it.
Right.
Really good cowboy game.
Yep.
So that was April 2011. So then we get into May. What do you see there in May, Craig?
In May, I see a really big empty space.
What?
Where we did one episode, and it was a True Dungeon interview and tech talk.
Well, we must have been having a rough month then. So
we must have dropped the ball there in May.
It was a rough time. So then let's go right to June. Wow, tough times there for the D6G.
True Dungeon is still cool. Okay, there we go.
And then 81, we did Geek Nation Tours interview and What Makes a Good Euro. No games reviewed there. But then in 82,
are you like skipping around? What are you doing?
No,
we got 80.
Yeah.
80 first was Catalyst Games Lab interview and strong. Oh, we reviewed Stronghold.
Oh, there you go. Let's talk about Stronghold. That's a good one.
Yeah.
All right. So Stronghold. Ooh, I like Stronghold.
Yes, you do.
So Stronghold is the very heavy Euro wooden bits game in which you are defending a castle against an army of marauding greenskins, orcs and goblins and trolls. And it's all cube-based. But it looks really cool on the table. It actually looks like you're hoarding it. And it's actually one of my favorite 3-player games. It plays really, really well at 3 players because one player plays the castle, the stronghold, and the other 2 players play 2 different flanks of the invading army who have to share resources and not screw things up. And it works really well in this format. You can play it 4 players with 2 players defending the castle. That works pretty well too, but I really like it in 3 players. I did play this recently also. I really like it a lot. I don't play it very often because the setup and teardown time is a bit long, but actual play and teaching the game is not hard. The other thing about it is it does play a little long, so I would say it's welcome a little bit, so it makes it also hard to get to the table.
Yeah.
But I do like it a lot. And also, I think we found we kept finding one side tended to win. I can't remember which. I think we were finding that the attacker tended to win. Is that right?
That rings a bell.
I think that's right. Well, the attacker always invaded, but the attacker never won in the time he took to technically win the game. That's what it was, I think. But we had a little trouble with that part, but I liked it a lot. And there's actually an expansion I've been jonesing to try, which adds undead.
Oh, really?
So I really want to try that.
Like instead of the goblins, or in addition to the goblins?
I believe it's instead of the goblins. I think you replace your invading horde with undead. Yes, I'm not sure what the mechanics are, how it works, but it looks pretty cool. So
that's a really cool idea.
It's a fun game. It's a really good game. I like. Have you played it, Craig? You must have.
I have not played it in a long time. I remember enjoying it, but again, the cubes and everything not really my thing. Yeah. So it's not kind of what I would go to if it was my choice, and so I have not played it as often as you. Right, in fact, haven't played it at all.
So this explains why we had a dearth in May, because in June we had 3 episodes, so we must have had a slippage.
Oh, see, there you go.
So then in June also we did Geek Nation Tours interview, which was cool, but not a game.
And what makes Euro?
Yep, and then we reviewed Star Trek Expeditions. Now this game is the one. This is the one that's a pure Star Trek co-op. It's based on the new movie when the first new Star Trek came out.
When it was first came out. Yeah.
And in this movie, it comes with the Clix guys. It comes with a Clix version of Kirk, Spock, McCoy, and Uhura. And then it comes with a Clix Enterprise and a Clix Klingon ship. And so on the top of the board, the Clix Enterprise and the Clix Klingon are trying not to kill each other. Meanwhile, you guys are on away team missions on the surface trying to get things done. And it does play out like the theme is like a Star Trek episode where you're trying to solve this crisis over here and make the local politics happy. And meanwhile, there's like some rebel scum over there you got to deal with. And I like this. It does have a little bit of I wish there was more artwork on the cards. It doesn't quite capture the theme as much as I'd hoped, but I did like it a lot. And actually, Nicole and I will have one of our favorite convention experiences of all times. We were at Carnage.
In Vermont.
Vermont, yep. And someone was playing this game there. Nicole and I had signed up to play it, and we had a blast. And it ended just in those highly dramatic moments where we almost lost, and Kirk saved the day, and Wild the woman and shot the. It was just worked out perfectly. It was like so. So it's a great game. I actually own it. I've played it I don't play it very often, but I have played it several times since we got it. And I also got the expansion, which adds Sulu and Scotty to the game. So you can play with more players. I like it still a lot, although I do like Fleet Captains better. And if I was going to play a Star Trek game, that would be the one I would lean towards.
Yeah.
But totally different experience, whereas that's head-to-head 2-player play, and this is a 4-player, or with the expansion more 5-player co-op game. So it's a little different.
Right. I not as a guy who's not really a Trekker guy. This didn't really do it for me, and I think mainly because I enjoy Star Trek on some levels, especially the newer stuff. But you need to bring me into it and show me that it's cool each time. You can't just say it's Star Trek and I'm already there.
Yeah.
And this game doesn't do that, like you said. With it, I think it lacks a lot in artwork and graphic design. That kind of just if somebody's going to talk me into a Star Trek game, it's going to be that Star Trek game you mentioned there. The
Fleet
it's going to be that one.
Yeah, I agree. It doesn't do anything to get you. It doesn't have anything in it that would get to bust past its theme. You really got to be a Trek fan to like the game, I think.
Yeah.
All right. So then in episode 83 in July.
In 83, we talked about dystopian wars, and we went back to dystopian wars to talk about the land aspect of the game.
Yes, we finally got on the land because the land models came out.
Yep. And I will say I haven't played it in a while, but I've been collecting it, and I've got a whole bunch of new terrain for it. I really enjoy this game. I still enjoy this game. I still think that it's one of those games that's it doesn't bubble up to the surface a lot, but it's right underneath the surface with constantly every couple of weeks somebody saying we need to get dystopian wars back on the table.
Yeah, it's not one of the ones where everybody's sold their stuff. I think some people did, but
exactly,
those of us and I like it a lot, and I liked playing the land port. It actually. I remember playing through the land portions, and I think, wow, this doesn't feel like a Navy game on dirt. It actually feels land-based, and I like mixing it. I love the fact that you can basically have this really, really large-scale feeling engagement with some elements on the same table on, like, the beach, with some, working fine, some guys on the island, and then you can have aircraft, and you can have ships fighting it out, and it all just works.
Yeah.
And the models are insanely great. I still have all
affordable.
And they're very affordable, easy to paint up. I still have all my Dystopian War stuff. Still like it a lot. Tried Dystopian Legions, didn't do anything for me, but I'd rather play Dystopian Wars on land.
That's like apples and oranges.
It is.
But yeah, this is there's no way I'm going to sell any of this stuff. Like I said, I'm still collecting it. I'm painting it. I'm enjoying it. And as soon as somebody says, "Hey, we're going to do Dystopian Wars," I'm going to be right there.
Yep. Yeah. No, so then later in that July month of 2011, we talked about Flames of War D-Day with Rafe.
Yep.
Which Craig and I still don't play Flames of War, but Rafe actually still does. Rafe,
he did. In fact, he
just saw him last Tuesday playing Flames of War like crazy. So he's still a hardcore Flames of War guy. And we reviewed Battleship Galaxies.
Right.
Now, I have tried, when we got Battleship Galaxies, I think all of us really kind of enjoyed it.
We did.
And I don't mean kind of like maybe we actually all did enjoy it.
We all did enjoy it.
I still have my copy. I don't know. Did you get a copy, Craig?
No, I never. Okay. I almost did, and I couldn't find it. There wasn't one available, and then I never went back.
So, and then about this time, my kids were, they're 10 and 11 now, so they were like 6, 7, and my oldest daughter, I started playing with them without the cards, and they thought it was cool. But the game's a little simple without the cards, so I wanted to get the cards back in. And honestly, I just haven't had a chance to get back to the table with them. And they started fighting over who got to play with me because it's a 2-player game. So I kind of said, if we're going to fight, we're going to wait till we both can play it. You can play each other kind of thing. So I do have it. I still keep looking at it. Like, I got to bring it out for my girls again. So I think it's a great family game. I like its execution. It's far better than the original Battleship, I think. So I like it a lot. But, I don't know. I don't know why I don't play it more often. I should. It's a very fun little game. I do wish it had facings. That's one thing I missed about it. I didn't like about it.
Yeah, I would say it's kind of trying to do too many things. It's trying to still be a simple game while being a little more complex. And I think in the long run, I would rather play a really simple abstract game or X-Wing.
Yeah, good point.
Is what it does. Yeah. Is why it doesn't it doesn't really interest me to play again. But again, if somebody wanted to play, I would play. I know I enjoyed it. I remember enjoying it. I don't think that I would lower my rating of the game from when we played it and reviewed it. It's just that there are games I think I would rather play if I'm the one providing the game.
Yep. Then let's see. Then in August
was another thin month.
A thin month. Well, probably Gen Con got us distracted.
Yeah. Well, that's true.
We did do the Death Watch Play by Mob.
Yep.
And then also we did the BattleTech Primer or Primer.
The Primer.
And this is before I think the intro kit came out, but I've played BattleTech a couple times since then.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's gone through a couple reiterations since then, and you've been following all along.
And we do have people that are kind of like eyeing it very carefully, and there's a core group that wants to play it more often. And I know a couple of the guys do play. Some of the guys who play the older games play it. I like it still. I would get it out there again. The new starter set is the way to go, for sure, with BattleTech. So yeah, it's definitely a long playing game. It's more of an older school game, but it's still got it where it counts. And the new, I did get at Gen Con this past year the new Alpha Strike rulebook. Haven't had a chance to get it to the table yet, but I have it. I know Will bought like every model they ever made already. So
yes, he did.
I just got Will. Unfortunately, he was one of the guys leading the charge, and he had a baby, so he is now
do it to
offline.
You.
So we got to get him back in the store so he can play Alpha Strike with me. That's pretty much what we got to have in there.
Yep.
So that was August 2011.
Yes.
And then what happened to September, Craig?
In September, Russ, we did a review in episode 86. We reviewed Gears of War.
All right. Oh, yes. Now, this is a sad story.
Yeah.
Because I like this game, and I had it, and I played it, I don't know, the board game version of Gears of War, of course. I played it like crazy for like a month or two with Ryan, like every day. Boom, 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 boom. And then we just stopped.
Yeah.
And it's never come back. And you know what I think it is?
What's that?
I think I get tired of pure co-op. Like, for some reason...
the game doesn't change, I don't think.
Well, it has different missions.
And there's no different challenges.
Yeah,
and
that's part of it. And I think it's also like Descent. I don't ever get tired of Descent for some reason.
Right.
Even though, I've played some of the same campaigns twice. I've played some of the same missions twice. But with another player thinking through it, the co-op games, that same thing happened with the D&D games. I think this is a good game. It's fun. The models are fantastic. It emulates the video game really, really well. You feel like you're fighting Locust. It's cool. But it does kind of like it's I don't know. I'm not. There aren't a lot of co-op games. Sentinels in the Multiverse is the exception. For some reason, with that game, I could play it over and over and over again and not get bored. But the other games, I don't know why. But Gears of War is in that camp where after you played it a few times, you get tired of fighting the AI of the game, and you wish there was human. I think
right. Well, that's what I mean when there's no variation. The things are going to do the same thing every time. And when it's opposing players, they're always going to come up with something weird.
Yeah.
So it's always going to keep it fresh.
And this was in the era when the co-op game was really, really big, right? 2011 was like the year where everything was becoming co-op. And and Chardalon came out, and this came out, and there were other co-op games. And I think I've kind of pulled back from co-op games now. And in fact,
you've never been a huge fan of strictly co-op.
No, I mean I got into them here, but I've pulled back now. And if a game's co-op, I generally will not be interested in it unless it really floors me, which is why I resisted Sentinels on Multiverse for so long, and now I'm a huge fan of it. But it was because of the pure co-op thing. But for some reason. Space Cadets is another one. The original Space Cadets, I didn't mind that it was co-op for some reason. I don't know why.
Right.
But
those are there's so much interaction on other levels.
Yeah, you're right. That's what
and Sentinels of the Multiverse, I mean, that game's replayability is infinite.
Right.
You've got every setting totally changes the game. Every bad guy has a totally new deck of cards, so they're going to change the game. And the way the cards are it makes perfect sense to me that Sentinels works where so many of these other games start to pale.
No, that's a good point.
And as for me, the Gears of War, I'd never played the video game. I wasn't into the universe at all. I thought the mechanics were great. I thought it was fun, but it wasn't anything that really caught my imagination off the bat.
All right. Let's see. Then we got into. Oh, here you go, Craig.
Yes.
Episode 87. We reviewed Quarriors.
Now, this is an interesting conversation to have.
Yes.
Because I think Quarriors is exactly the opposite of Merchants and Marauders that hasn't done anything to freshen itself. Quarriors is one of these games that's got so many expansions now that it's almost like, hey, want to play Quarriors? I don't have any of the expansions. Right. I love the game. I haven't played it in a little while because every time I'm like, he wants to play Quarriors, everybody's like, oh, which expansion you want to play? I'm like, I just want to play. I have never played. I played that game a lot, and I never played it so much that I needed an expansion. Mm-hmm. So I just think it has, when you go to the bookshelf, I mean, when the shelf in the game store, and you look at the Quarriors section, there's just so many expansions now. It's daunting to me.
Yeah.
I think Small World did the same thing, although I still love Small World, and I have half of those expansions. But for some reason, I think there's a fine line between keeping the interest going and boosting your goosing your player base every now and then, as opposed to redoing. I mean, and they didn't redo Quarriors; it's the same game, but every expansion adds whole new things that you have to learn. It's not like, here's a couple new dice, and they work with the exact same way as the old dice, but with new rule. I mean, it's like, now we've got corruption, and now we've got this, and now we've got that, to the point where, I have corruption. So I do have one of the Quarriors expansions, and I enjoy it. I think it's a great game. I think it's a genius game. Mm-hmm. I played it a lot over the summer, but yeah, in the gaming group that we have, it's almost like nobody even mentions it anymore because nobody knows which expansion version.
Which version should we do?
Exactly. Yep. Yeah.
All right. Fair enough. Well, I know you played a lot of it though, and I don't see it much anymore. So I don't know if it's just gotten replaced by other quick, fast, dirty games or not. But
that's true too. I mean, that genre, that sort of niche, if you will, has really been filled with a whole array of game. I mean, Dungeon Roll right now, Perudo before that. I mean, there's just been a flood of these filler, quick
games.
Dice rolly, zombie dice, Martian dice, Lucador, the Mexican wrestling dice. Apparently, is going to be huge. I don't know.
New one. So then after Quarriors,
speaking of Fleet Captain,
did episode 88, September 2011, Star Trek Fleet Captains. Now, this game, we got that Gen Con that year in 2011. Yeah. I painted all my dudes, both fleets, the Klingons and the Federation. And I have played this game, I would say, almost without fail, at least once every 6 months. So that's, I guess, not a lot, but it's pretty good. I mean, it comes back every time. I literally just played it this past fall. When the Romulan expansion came out, I snapped it up immediately. I painted all those guys too, and played the game a couple times in 3-player mode. Which is, now this is a great 3-player game. Also,
Oh yeah.
Really, really like this game. I will play it at the drop of a hat. It's a 2-player game. So one of the challenges I have is when we get to 2-player games, I generally tend to play miniature games first. So that's one of the reasons this doesn't see more action. I like the Romulans now because I can play 3 players. It is a meaty game, but I never have any problems getting someone to play with me. If I put on the email group, hey, this Tuesday I'm bringing Fleet Captains, I got a line foreman. It's just a great game. So really, really like it. If you are a Star Trek fan, this is a must-own game. I would argue it is the best Star Trek game ever made. Period. It is the most true to the series. It's doing what you want to do most, which is playing with lots of spaceships. It's got fleet actions, but also and it's strategic instead of tactical, which is really what Star Trek's about. So you're really working on which sectors of the galaxy you're going to control, which planets are you going to try to build star bases next to. And when you fight, it's more like general strategic instead of tactical. But I like it. I like everything about it.
Yeah. Again, not a Star Trek guy, but this is a game that I would play if somebody wanted to play it. I enjoyed the game when I played it, and I would enjoy playing it again.
Yeah. All right. Then we get into October of 2011. And now we're getting into the serious business here. So October 2011, we reviewed Mouse Guard in episode 89.
Yes.
Now, Craig, did you ever play Mouse Guard?
No, I don't remember reviewing it either, so I think I might have been gone again.
It may have been a Rafe and me review.
Yeah.
I have played Mouse Guard. I have run campaigns in it for both my kids. I also did a campaign where I ran a one-day one-off with a listener via Microsoft, the Xbox Connect.
Oh, that's right.
And with his kids. It was kind of cool, actually. That was pretty fun. We should do that again. I guess you should contact him. That was fun. It's a great game. I like it a lot. It ended up being that I had two role-playing games that I thought were perfect for kids. One was A Fairy's Tale, which I actually played before Mouse Guard, which is simpler. Then I got Mouse Guard, and I found that Mouse Guard has a lot of sort of interesting, in-depth mechanics, especially around combat, that I didn't feel like the kids wanted to get into that much.
Right.
And they liked the greater simplicity and flexibility of what was in A Fairy's Tale more. And it also turned out my kids kind of like fairies more than mice. So
well, there you go.
That's kind of where it went. So we ended up playing Fairy's Tale more often because we do a lot of role-playing. We just play that more than Mouse Guard. But if you like the Mouse Guard universe, this is a great game. The box set is fantastic. The components are awesome. And I do like the system. And I know Rafe has played the bejesus out of it since the review. I mean, he had that running online game he played for like at least a year and a half since the review. So he definitely got a lot of time out of it, Craig. I know it's not your cup of tea, but...
right. No, but I mean, yeah, I know you guys loved it. I know Rafe really loved it.
Mm-hmm. And I know it's still gets talked about. And I think there are still one. I know when Rafe played with his crew over there in Portsmouth with old Andy, said they still play Mouse Guard now and again. So they still get that to the table pretty frequently. Then here you go, Craig. Then in episode 90, we reviewed Craig's favorite game ever, or maybe not, Dread Fleet. So what are your thoughts on Dread? Now, when it came out, you got pretty excited about it.
I was excited. I own it. I have it half painted, and it hasn't come out of the box since I put it away when it was half painted.
Now, why is that the case?
That is the case because when there's so many games to play, if I'm going to play a naval game, I'm going to play a game that has a little more granularity and a lot more options for fleet composition. So I would play Uncharted Seas way above head and shoulders above Dread Fleet.
Yeah, let me ask you this, because when you got Dread Fleet, though, you were really excited about it.
I was.
I know we played it at least once.
Yeah.
And it was cool. I mean, the components are no doubt awesome.
Yeah.
But you've had, like, for example, what is it? Sails of Glory just came out, right?
Yes.
And you've had that for about, what, a week and a half?
I've had that. No, I would say close to like 3 weeks.
You've played that more times in those 3 weeks than you ever played Dread Fleet.
And 100% true.
So I think there's something here. I don't think it's necessarily game count. I think there's something about Dread Fleet when we played it. I remember...
Well, you really didn't like the luck element.
I didn't like it. It was way too fiddly and luck-based for me.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that affected anybody else, but it certainly bothered me a lot. So I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one. But I think the
luck didn't bother me. It was a little fiddly, and I don't know why.
But
to
I like
be totally
Sails of Glory.
honest.
Sails of Glory sucked me right in, and it doesn't make sense to me really because Dread Fleet has really. You know what I didn't like either? Here's another thing about it I didn't like.
Yeah.
It's got all these really cool different ships. that are totally different factions, but they kind of divided them all into two sides.
Right.
So you kind of want to have like the dwarves together and the elves together.
Yeah, well, it lacks any sense of unity when and that's what I mean when you don't have that fleet selection. So you can't, you lack identity, is what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you're not building up any great personal allegiance unless you're like, I like the good guys, I like the bad guys. That's really all you've got.
Yep.
And so there's not like, oh, I'm the dwarf guy, or I'm the vampire guy, which would have been cool, except that this is the second in Games Workshop's big cash grab, strategy of
after Space Hulk,
doing a big splash game that never gets any support.
Yeah. Well, I think this one was generally considered a flop because I think it didn't sell.
Oh, I think it was too. Yeah.
It didn't. It just
especially
didn't
after following up
Space Hulk, which was not a flop. It did very well. Space Hulk was pretty much perfectly executed, I thought.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. So that was October 2011. Let's see if we can button up the whole year of 2011 here, Craig. Then we had November.
Now, what was introduced in episode 91 in November, Russ?
I don't know.
The third chair.
Oh, yes. I'd forgotten. Yes, episode 90 was very sad.
And who was the very first third chair?
Ross Watson, of course.
Ross Watson.
He has that distinction of being the very first third chair.
Yeah.
And we talked about conventions and Ross
RPG
brought on his friend
design, and he brought in Ed Stark, and it was a big, huge conversation on RPG design and the history and very cool stuff. But no game game reviews.
So then in episode 92, later that very month, November, we reviewed Super Dungeon Explorer. Now,
the second third chair, Randall Bills.
Yes, Randall helped us review that. And now, Super Dungeon Explorer, I own. I have my copy. I got my battle phone for it. I've also got several of the expansions. My girls actually really like it. My niece and nephew like it, but if you get too many players at once, it does slow down too much. They don't like that. But they do like the game, and they love the models. And it's one of the first model sets my youngest daughter ever painted. And she really likes it. So Super Dungeon Explorer is one. I've just played it recently. I've just played it again this holiday season when I was together with at my brother's house. So I do break it out quite a bit. It's also my go-to game when the Descent crew can't make it. I'll break out Super Dungeon Explorer, and whoever's there will play with me as well. So I do like it a lot. It's fun. It's fast. The expansions are cool. Now that there's some expansions, you have some variety in the monsters you want to pick, a lot more hero selection. It does rival Descent now in terms of total model count. And what's also been improved since we reviewed the game, if you go back and listen to 92, you'll hear me talking about the assembly of the models, how much of a pain in the butt it is. Cool Mini or Not doesn't do that anymore. It's all pre-assembled now. And even when you buy the expansion boxes, they're totally pre-assembled. So now it's pretty much dump them out, play the game. If you want to paint them, you can. Before, the assembly was really a chore. And if you were not a miniature assembly person, it was very challenging. So they fixed that one really complaint, and now you've got really high-quality miniatures that are pre-assembled. So I think it's a no-brainer. If you like dungeon crawls, and it's also got that little video game chibi look. So you definitely ought to like chibi.
Yeah, I was going to say I don't think it's a no-brainer because I like dungeon crawls, and this has never really been my cup of tea.
Right.
I played it a few times. I enjoyed the mechanics. I think it's a little more simple than dungeon. Well, I mean, I think it's obviously a little more simple than Descent
for sure.
And the artwork and the graphic design across the board, from miniatures to cards, etc., is all that little big-eyed chibi video game thing, which I don't like at all.
Right.
Which I think is a lot. There's an aesthetic element that may stand between you and this game if you're like me. But I think mechanics-wise, like you say, it's a fun game. It's definitely a good game. Like for you, when Descent doesn't happen, it's kind of like a good step-in game because it doesn't take a lot of prep time and things like that. But I do think it does what it does well, but because it does what it does well, as it's not trying to be all things to all people, so it's not going to be all things to all people. There's going to be people like me, for instance, that don't like that art style, that are just kind of like, I feel like I'm playing a kid's game.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
All right, then we get into the Christmas here of 2011 as we wrap up this last chapter. And one of my all-time favorite games, Craig, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
Game of Thrones.
This was the first edition, right?
No, I think this is the reprint edition.
No? Oh, yes, re-release. Yeah, you're right.
So this is re-released in 2011 when they re-released Game of Thrones. This is because the TV series had just started. And although, interestingly, this was not licensed on the series since then, Fantasy Flight's gotten the TV license. They had their card games are based on the license. But the board game, they redid the board game. Craig and I have gone on record as saying one of the board games that got us back into board games and the board gaming renaissance started in the early 2000s was, at least in the U.S. here, was we played Game of Thrones, right, Craig?
Yeah, absolutely.
And great game. We played it we played the heck out of it when we first found the original version. And I actually never bought the original Game of Thrones. So when the re-release came out, I picked it up because I liked the new components. It has both, the expansion built right into it. I love it.
2 expansions, yeah.
And it fixes a couple of issues they had in the original game where the ports and stuff are all built into the game now, so you don't run into that problem.
Yep.
A couple small things fixed. It still has the challenges of, whenever you have a pre-built deployment, because they've got the board set up, you always have a starting position that's kind of like where the book is in the start of the first book. So certain sides have a sort of predisposed play style they either kind of got to do or they're kind of going to be out of luck.
Right. The first few turns are going to be very similar.
Yeah, either very similar or you're just going to get hosed because whatever. So Lannister has to do certain ways. Stark is kind of almost out of luck unless certain players buddy up with him or something. So it's but I absolutely love the mechanics of this game, and I love the fact that it really tells the story of the books.
It does a great job of doing
table.
that. Yep.
So it's just a fun game, and anytime someone would say, "Hey, you want to play Game of Thrones?" I would definitely say yes.
Yep. Now, interestingly enough, because we starting with Merchants and Marauders, and I mentioned how I bought it and I never played it. That 2011 became the year where I decided I was not going to buy a game just because I loved it in the review. And I have the original Game of Thrones game, and I loved it. And I played it a lot. In fact, it featured prominently in one particular element of my bachelor party.
Yes.
And I will stand by the review that we gave it. I love the game, but I knew, this is where I actually applied my brain, that the people that I would be most likely to play this game with already owned it.
Yes.
So Russ and a couple other guys bought it, and I went, you know what? I am not going to buy it myself because the times that I'm playing games when these guys aren't around, or at least one of them's not around, are so seldom that I'm not going to need it. And it has popped up a couple times where I could have played it with like your brother and Joe and Pete, and it would have been an awesome night. But there were other games that I already owned that we could still play. So I don't own it. I wish I did, but I can't justify it really because I've got the Game of Thrones, the what is it? The Battle Lore.
Oh yeah, Game of Thrones Battle Lore.
Clash of Kings or whatever it's called.
Yep. Now,
and that's 2-player. And what I'm saying is I went and I bought that and a bunch of stuff, and I don't play it either. So,
well, if I'm honest though, if I had like 4 players and they're like, I want to play a fantasy based, conquer the world game, I would really rather play Rune Wars. If I'm honest.
Really, I see. I would not.
But,
I would way rather play Game of Thrones.
But I would. But based on theme, I'd rather play Game of Thrones, depending on the setting. Like if we're about to watch the show, or if I've just read the books again, or the new series is starting, or it's all in my head, I would love to do that. But I think as a conquest game, because of the fact that there's this fixed setup, and you're just kind of SOL for certain, that's all I'm thinking. Plus, you got the different army types and unit types, and you got dragons and giants, and so
See, I like this game. I think it's a nice, clean game. I think the combat is great and fast and clean and brutal. I love the theme, and I think it's a faster game than Rune Wars also.
So then, at the very end of December, we reviewed. Well, actually, we did a bunch of miniature war game.
We did 3 mini reviews.
We reviewed War Machine Wrath, which was the book back then, the new hotness. Of course, I still play War Machine all the time.
And I have a whole new army.
Yeah, you do. We reviewed Warhammer Badlands, which was the expansion for Warhammer of the time.
Yeah, I actually played the campaign, and it was neat.
It was cool. And then we also reviewed Mercs,
which neither of us liked, and we still don't.
Yes, and I don't think I've seen we had a small but determined posse of Merc fans at that time.
And they 100% translated into what?
Infinity.
Exactly.
All of them migrated over to Infinity, never to open a Merc book again. As far
now
as
they still talk about Merc.
They do.
I was floored last year in at Adepticon when somebody was like hovering. Oh no, it was Dave at Gen Con was like hovering over the Merc stuff.
Yeah.
And like, I'm just trying to decide which faction to buy. I'm like, seriously? So, I mean, it's floating in their subconscious, but it doesn't even enter into conversation locally.
Yeah. I don't know. So I think Infinity, when they discovered Infinity, our local group got all upset about that and doesn't play Mercs anymore.
Yeah, well, Mercs is a neat idea, but it's so wrapped up in the gimmick of using the little cards and not needing measuring, and and it's all gimmick. I mean, it doesn't add anything other than, hey, you don't need a tape measure. There's no, there's no plus brought to the game because of those little gimmick elements that I think, the models are cool. Some of them are really cool. And the world is that near future kind of thing. But then if that's what's bringing you in is that theme and and the models, then Infinity kind of has it all over Mercs without, it has its own gimmicks, but it kind of like removes that gimmicky element. So I really think that once Infinity caught on locally, Mercs was doomed.
I think you're right. Yeah. So there you have it. That takes us through the end of December 2011 through episode 94 on Where Are They Now?
The Game Edition.
Exactly.
Thanks for purchasing a D6G Lost Chapter. Supporting the show helps it grow.